So, quick preface to this video. I have a mini fridge under my desk right here, and it makes this annoying fridge noise, and it drives me crazy because somehow between like that and my laptop fans, it like freaks out all this background noise in the microphone sometimes. So when we move, I have to figure out like what I'm doing to make the audio situation better where I film. But anyway, that's beside the point. Today, what I'm doing real quick is giving some feedback on a video that William sent me, and the video is currently sort of in like an NDA situation, so I'm not sharing the video as like a screencast in this. He said there's a chance he'll be able to share it, so he's sort of thinking about it some more, and if so, he will probably post a link, or we'll do something, or maybe we can just share some frames. I don't know, I'm still figuring that out, but I wanted to share some thoughts because I feel like they could be helpful to you guys in general. I'm not 100% sure how helpful they'll be without you being able to see it, but we're gonna take a stab at it. So basically what it is it's like a travel doc type piece, not travel doc in like the documentary of a trip kind of way, but it's sort of about travel, and I would say that it's commercial, but it's definitely more on the like run and gun side of commercial. So I'd be curious to know more about like exactly what pre-pro went into this. It seems like it was pretty well thought out, and sort of that the like script was well done and whatnot. But so his question, let me go back real quick just to make sure I don't miscommunicate his question. So shot on Amira and Cooks, running around San Francisco trying to get what we could, mostly wanting feedback on simple practices I can incorporate into run and gun shoots like this to try and make them look more polished. At the end of the day, I walked away wishing they'd saved the money on the camera rental and instead just paid for a day of prep with me and let me use my Ursa Mini. But I want to get to a place where I can more easily tackle shoots of this nature. Okay, so I 100% empathize with all of that, and feel like this is a position that I get thrown into a lot, especially like the core videos, which we've done a few director breakdowns on and stuff, but like pretty much every one of those shoots was getting thrown into a location. Pretty small crew. It might have been a little bigger than this. We had like 4 or 5 people, I think, every time, but like that's me, a grip / AC, a sound guy, producer director, you know, so it wasn't really like big infrastructure, and most of the time we either weren't lighting stuff or we were shooting pretty tight on everything, you know, as far as like not big lighting packages because we were flying in. So there were a few times we busted out jokers and stuff, but most of it was like no light or a few quasars or something. And so I mean, the biggest things that jumped out to me about this piece are like, I feel like there are some good compositions, there's some sharp stuff, like it looks good, but I feel like it sort of falls into that mushy zone, which I, you know, have talked about in the past, where it sort of lives in that like underexposed with not much in the way of like highlights realm, and it's sort of like, I feel like there's not a ton of shadow detail. It's sort of got slightly lifted blacks, which is a common thing now, but I feel like the combo of like slightly lifted blacks just makes a lot of it feel really mushy and like not non-intentional, like that's a harsh sounding word, but like it doesn't really lead your eye anywhere, because everything sort of sits in this like, you know, I don't know, 5% to 50% range, with a few things that are a little bit higher. So I tend to, as a general rule, I don't really do super low contrast a lot for me personally, and I think a lot of that is because it just feels mushy to me unless it's done really well. So I tend to try to you know, have my blacks in there, and you know, maybe you're digging up a little bit of shadow detail just above that, but I like having a pretty hard black point. And I like controlling the contrast of the top of the image too. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm going to be super contrasty, because there are times that I get grades back from production companies. I'm like, ooh, you guys crunched that up, huh? But, you know, finding that sweet spot. And to me, a lot of this feels just a little too low con. And I think that's a thought that I would sort of generate towards a lot of people, because again, I don't know if you can see this, is that when you get too low con and start lifting your blacks and stuff, it just doesn't draw your eye anywhere. And so some of these frames, like there's a scene in the beginning where our talent is sort of sitting around this like bonfire outside a hotel, and there's nothing really drawing your eye to the talent at any point in time because it's all just sort of in the mush zone. And so the only highlights are the fire, and then there's like in the wide shot there's 2 lights in the background, but there's nothing that brings your eye to the talent. And so it's like it's a cool frame, but it doesn't really do a whole lot for me due to that. And then like the next shot after that again is a shot of the talent, and I think there's just as much drawing our eye to this chair next to him as there is to him, because the chair's light and orange and he's predominantly blue, and his face is underexposed a little bit relative to the chair next to him, so your eye wants to go to the chair, it doesn't want to go to him. And like part of what makes these things feel strong is setting yourself up so that you're always going to him. So maybe that means moving the chairs around, maybe that means pushing a little extra light on him, maybe that means doing a wardrobe change for him to help bring you into him a little more, maybe that means blocking out something, you know, or doing a move in such a way that you're sort of pushing in and drawing the eye to talent. But I think that's one of my big general things is like if you look at each frame and you go like, where do I want the viewer to be looking? And is the viewer's eye being directed there? And so like there's a shot after that that's a single of him, doesn't have the other chair in it, and it looks good because your eye goes to him. I would say it's probably still a little on the underexposed mushy side for me in general, as well as, and this might be Vimeo compression, but it feels a little bit soft. But that also might be, I think you're shooting through fire, and so I know that makes things weird. But it definitely just feels a little mushy, you know. And so whether that's over like lifting your exposure a little bit and adding some negative to give yourself some shape and whatever, or you know, there's different ways you can go about that depending on the scenario. Maybe it's flying in a quasar, maybe it's, you know, shooting just a little earlier in the day. I honestly couldn't be too specific without knowing the whole scenario, but that's one of the big things that sort of sticks out to me. And so then you cut to this wide shot of this sort of I don't know, bed and breakfast house, whatever it is, and the thing that sucks your eye in is these practicals in the windows, because that's the only highlight and everything else is pretty mushy. And so you don't even really see talent sort of sneak in here. And hopefully you guys will get to see this and it'll make more sense. But yeah, so like I would be inclined to maybe change the blocking somehow so that we could put talent like in front of one of the windows so that his silhouette would cross and we would see that. But it's a tough situation. Otherwise, you know, there's like a lamppost here. I don't know if you could maybe do anything with that. Or I honestly maybe would have just cut this shot because it just feels a little like, I like the symmetry of it and whatnot, but there's nothing drawing my eye to the action, which to me makes it just like a shot of nothing, sort of. I also think that the little like shed peeking in on the right side of the frame sort of is distracting. It's a edge distraction that the like white siding pulls your eye over there. After that, the interiors look pretty good. I like the interiors. They're definitely warm, which is nice. I still feel like there's some edge distraction-y type stuff going on, like this first wide shot of the interior. There's like a mantle on the left side of frame that to me just feels cluttery again. I would probably try to frame that out. I really try to look at frames as like, again, take this as a still image and like, would I post this on Instagram? So you sort of think like a photographer, or you know, you look at other frames and just shots from cinematographers, and it's usually pretty clean in that like it's got edges to it and there's not stuff really pulling your eye off unless there's a good story reason to do that, and it's pulling your eye to whatever it is that you're supposed to be paying attention to. So that's something that I keep in mind. So I think the interior looks good for the most part, though the reverse, I feel like that's a fixture creeping into the edge of frame, and the sort of the movement of that shot's honestly a little weird to me. I would maybe just get like a tight of him throwing a book on the bed, but the sort of like follow shot coming down, it just doesn't do a lot for me, honestly, because like 80% of the shot there's nothing to look at. because like the beginning of it, you're looking at sort of the back of his head framed weird, and there's like a fixture on the side of the frame and a practical on the other side of the frame, and then it sort of comes down the like middle of the shot, literally a shot of nothing, because he sort of walks off the frame and his hands in the bottom corner, but you're just looking at a whole bunch of nothing, which to me isn't super compelling. So maybe just a single more locked off shot, like Wes Anderson style of book getting thrown onto the table, or the bed rather, could have done it or something. But I feel like that shot, the light's not necessarily bad, but it's just the blocking of it feels a little blah. And then sort of progressing into like the art museum stuff, I think it just feels like a tough situation where you don't presumably have much control of anything, but you can definitely feel that. So like I probably would be inclined to like talk to the director, or if you're directing it, I would consider like swapping the blocking up so that like we don't have to shoot tungsten and daylight, because the tungsten just sort of pulls funny on his skin tones. And like there's a lot of nice stuff going on out in this daylight area behind him, but then like the shot through the window is cool, but it's a little weird because like it looks like it's old glass or something, so like the frame's all warped, and you've got these two hard edges kicking, so that's a little tricky, but I mean, oh, and then the reverse of him is like, I think it's a good idea, but it's just like it's a little soft. The light on him isn't really great. He's a little underexposed and mushy again, and there's like a highlight on the window behind him. It's a little Dutch, so the door frame or window frame that's behind him isn't quite straight. The fire alarm is sort of like an edge distraction, and so it's like 75% of a really good idea, but 25% is that like last bit you have to push it of like cleaning up every little thing of like, okay, well maybe this is a good idea, but maybe if we go over here, like it doesn't have the cool window symmetry, but we have a little better light that'll help him pop, and we have you know, we don't have the background that's as distracting with lights and highlights and whatnot. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think that sort of sums up most of my thoughts, and sort of continues throughout, is that I think there's a lot of really good ideas, but I just feel like the last like 5% push, which a lot of the times is honestly just something you get with practice of like knowing what the best 5% to push is, because sometimes it's light, sometimes it's location, sometimes it's blocking, sometimes it's movement, but like that's one of the things that I feel like I'm really thankful that I've sort of learned to be intuitive with, is like you just got to figure out like what's the one thing when I don't have control, like what's one thing I can control that will help, and how can I push in that direction a little bit, you know. So in general, you know, I would say I do think this could be better with a regrade, honestly, too. I think the lifted blacks thing, and just honestly the grade in general, like it feels sort of luddy to me, and it just feels a little cheap. Hopefully that's not offensive to say, but like I feel like a mirror footage should look a lot better than this, and I think that you don't have like the worst light or anything. I'd be curious to see the raw files, but I do think that your grade isn't doing you any favors, and that I'd be curious to know what it looks like straight 709 even. I think might look better than this. But like the interior shot of him in the house at the beginning that's warm, like that's the most 709 feeling to me, and it's the best feeling part of the whole thing. Because after that, it all just tends towards mushy, and there's some weird hue shifting and lifted blacks, and it's just not my favorite. So anyway, to sum this up, for anyone who's still watching this, if you haven't seen this video, this probably didn't make any sense, but I would say if you're trying to do like a run and gun style thing and have it feel good, be really intentional about your compositions and your blocking. And if there's a sequence that someone wants to do that you can't block well, see if there's a way that you can change it. See what you can do lighting wise to try and make sure that things are popping, whether that's turning lights on and off, maybe that's bringing some small fixtures, maybe that's just throwing in a modifier, or you know, you just do what you can and sort of play with your exposure as necessary to put the important part of the frame in the level it needs to be. Because sometimes that's it too, is like the frame you're looking at, there's nothing you can do light-wise to make, you know, your talent or your action look the way it wants. But if you shift your angle a little bit and change your exposure a little bit, then you'll be in a good place where you're in a much stronger frame. This is something that I want to demo really soon. I'm working on getting a few people together so we can sort of do a fake shoot and I can go over, here's what it looks like, here's what I would do to sort of get that last 10% done. But anyway, that's a separate thing. Composition, see what you can do to push that last 10%. Honestly, I think a general rule for me too would stay relatively simple with the grades. I usually start pretty close to a regular 709 and then just do some like little tweaks. And I think that generally you'll find that looks best. If you don't have a good color background, which like I don't try to usually get too crazy unless it's a piece that just like is supposed to be super crazy for some reason. But I mean, other than that, dude, I think it's good. I just think that it misses some of those last 5 to 10% things, whether it's blocking or lighting or whatever. But I think that there are a lot of really strong moments in it. I think the concept's strong. And I think that with a little bit more time, that like if you revisited this in probably a few months, it would really sing. And so it's just getting a hang of it, honestly, and just trying to really think critically about it. And when you can, I would say too, like a lot of the times what I'll ask for on shoots like this is I want director or production or whoever to know what they need as much as possible, and then I'll ask for, like, we call it DP's choice, and just sort of like play around in the space and see what you can get. And because sometimes doing that and like just trying stuff is where you go like, oh, that looks really good, then try to be intentional about why does this look good, and then you have that mental note for next time of like, oh, this isn't working, it's just like that other scenario, but if I do this then it'll help. So this isn't a lot of like super specific feedback, but general advice I would give for like run and gun stuff. Try different things, learn what works. Always have an open mind with production of what you can push. So I'm a very big person. I mean, like, hey, like, can I have any control over the schedule? Can we do this sooner or later? Can we switch the order of these scenes? So try to be thinking of time of day and light. Locations, what if we switch locations? And go back and forth, you know, like, can we move this scene from this living room and put it over in this kitchen? Or can we do this instead of in this location? Like, you know, that other place we're going later, we should just do this scene there because it's going to be better. So you sort of got to always be thinking like a director and thinking of like, what do we need? Where does it have to happen? What's our schedule? And you're trying to just sort of take those little 10%, 5% pushes with all those pieces of information and go, well, if I move this, that'll help. And if I move this, that'll help. And so you're a lot of the times not necessarily doing super DP things of like super lighting stuff, but by helping every other department cater to you a little bit when you don't have control, it helps you get the best possible outcome. So hopefully that was helpful. It was a little long, and I feel like I should have screen recorded it just in case, but I didn't, so maybe you guys will get the link and you can sort of hopefully follow along and see what I'm talking about. It's only a minute long piece, so it should be pretty easy. But anyway, William, hopefully that was helpful. I think you're doing great, dude. I wouldn't beat yourself up about it for sure. And I totally feel you. I definitely feel like it's the kind of shoot where like I probably would have pushed to say, yeah, let's do it on an Ursa Mini and have like a grip and a very small lighting package or something personally, even if it was like some battery powered quasars or something. But you win some, you lose some. You learned a lesson for next time. So as long as the client's happy, you guys are good. So project critique coming soon. Gonna do that before Christmas, I think. So if you have any projects, websites, Instagram accounts, whatever you want me to look at and give you some thoughts on, share those. I will say, and I didn't mention this in the last video, any context you can share on the project is really helpful. So whether that's, hey, this is sort of the story of how this got made, or hey, this is what this is supposed to do, it's more helpful. It's easier for me to give feedback when I know what you're trying to accomplish than when I'm just looking at a project with no context. So that's definitely definitely helpful. Any sort of context, and even production details, honestly, like if it's like, this is our crew and gear list or something else, like, because then I can sort of look at that and help filter feedback through that of like, well, maybe if you saved money on this and put it towards this would have fixed this problem for you. So anyway, Project Critique, check that out. New podcast going up hopefully today, we'll see, and more videos coming soon. As always, let me know what you want to see. Thank you guys so much for your support this year. We've made it to the end of 2017, which is super exciting, and I want this to continue getting bigger and better. So the new community site is up. Go check it out. If you have anything you want to see, stuff that you think would be valuable, it could be videos from me, it could be videos from other people, conversations with other people. There's nothing stopping me from getting on a Skype call with someone and not releasing it as a podcast, but releasing it to you guys. So if there's stuff that you want, let me know. I want to do a Zoom hangout soon, maybe bring in another guest like when we had Jared Fidel on, but I'm still dialing in all of that. So I would say odds are that we probably have 2 or 3 more things dropping this month before Christmas, and then the big goal is making a plan for 2018 on what you guys want to see so that everyone ends up happy, helped, and is getting further along in their careers. So if you have any thoughts on that, thank you so much. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.